Hello, welcome to video 2 for chapter 1. With this video today, I wanted to talk to you about, go through some of the vocabulary that is really important to have an idea of, to understand as we move through the course. So if you kind of want to follow along on page 9, there are 5 words that I really want to make sure that we understand, because a lot of times these words are used interchangeably, but in reality, they're not interchangeable words. So let's start with the very first word, bias. Bias is a preference or inclination, favorable or unfavorable, that inhibits impartial judgment. So when I think of bias, I think of my children. I think they're pretty great. They're smart, they're funny, they're thoughtful people, but I'm kind of biased. I'm their mom. So that when we think of bias, we think of how people they're inclined to feel one way or another based on experiences, relationships, beliefs, okay? So that's what a bias is. So then the next term in our list here is stereotype. So stereotype is a positive or negative trait or traits that are ascribed to a certain group and to most members of that group. So when we see a particular person behave in one fashion, and then we say, oh gosh, all people who belong to that group behave that way, that's a stereotype, right? And sometimes stereotypes, we think that maybe they're positive, but the reality of it is that all stereotypes are negative, because they can lead to negative behaviors from other people. So one example that we talk about in my face-to-face class a lot is the stereotype that Asians are good at math. So that sounds positive, right? Like, if you're an Asian student, you should be good at math. The reality of that is what? So when an Asian student is not good at math, but they go to their math teacher and they're like, I'm struggling with this. Well, why are you struggling? You should be able to get this. This is math. It's easy for you, right? And so that student is dismissed. And if the student is dismissed once, what are the possibilities that that student is going to go back to that instructor and ask for help again? Slim to none. So especially early on in a person's school career, that's what we find with students who struggle with reading or math when they're in middle school and high school. It's because they had a bad experience like that in elementary or middle school. So that matters. And that what we can sometimes think of as positive stereotypes are truly negative. They have a negative impact. Okay, so prejudice, a negative attitude toward a group and individuals perceived to be members of that group. Being predisposed to behave negatively toward members of a group. So when we say this person belongs to this group, therefore I don't like them, or I already have a negative opinion of that group, and I'm going to exhibit that opinion by not treating them respectfully and not treating them with the same dignity that I would treat somebody else. That's showing prejudice. Bigotry is when we have an extreme negative attitude leading to the hatred of a group and individuals regarded as members of that group. So when we fully express hatred for a particular group of people, we don't like them because, and it doesn't matter, all members of that group, we are going to treat them that way. That is bigotry. Full out hatred for a particular group of people. And then lastly, on this page anyway, discrimination. Discrimination are actions or practices carried out by a member or members of dominant groups or their representatives that have a differential and negative impact on a member or members of subordinate groups. So when we're actively going out of our way to give members of that group a different experience. And so when we think about discrimination and we think about prejudice, we think about how it can be exhibited on an individual level, but it can also be exhibited as institutional. So we have laws that feed into discrimination. So we have, and when we think back to like the 40s and 50s, redlining was huge. Like if a person of color wanted to purchase a home in an all-white community. Okay, sorry about that. The pager just went off. So when people of color attempted to purchase homes in predominantly white neighborhoods, they were not allowed to, basically. There were ways in which they were denied loans. They were told that there were lots of different things. So we have and another one of the ways that discrimination can be built into, like, let's say the hiring process, is when companies, businesses do not, when they don't post a job opening through many different ways of sharing that position being open. And when they rely completely on word of mouth, when they rely on, well, I know somebody who's looking for a job and you'd be a great fit. So if you apply, I will give you a recommendation and you're a shoo-in. Come on, I can get you that job. And so a lot of positions are filled through word of mouth. And so if I'm hanging out with people who are just like me, if I don't have a lot of diverse friends and family that I can share that information with, then it tends to stay the same. It tends to remain a very homogeneous group, which then doesn't lend itself well to diversity, because we're feeding into that. These are my people. These are the folks that I live and work with, and we want to continue to. And it's not on a conscious level always necessarily. It's just, I know this job's open. You're my friend. You're looking for a job. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you because that's what we do. So that's why it's really important to understand that it's not prejudice and discrimination discrimination isn't just exhibited at an individual level, but it's also at a cultural level. It's at an institutional level and a cultural level. And so we need to, and that's really what's going on today, is we need to break that down, and we need to fix that institutionalized discrimination so that it truly is an equal opportunity for all people. All people are represented fairly. All people have the same opportunities. And because everybody's made aware of what those opportunities are, and they're told how to go about and access those opportunities. So that's where discrimination can be institutional and it can be cultural. The last two concepts that I really want to talk about for this video today are the concepts of race and ethnicity. So when I first started teaching this class, it was race, ethnicity, and diversity studies. And so race and ethnicity were really highlighted and focused on, as these still are. But let's talk about what those terms actually mean. The race is a man-made construct. There's a really great video that I share with Intro to Sociology about how race is just that. It's a human term. It's not scientific. There isn't any evidence to share that says this piece of DNA says you're black. This piece of DNA says you're white. This piece of DNA says you're brown. It doesn't exist. Race is a man-made construct. And so if we can come to that term, if we can come to understand and realize it for what it is, it makes conversations a little bit easier to happen. The other term is ethnicity. And ethnicity is really about cultural differences. It really has a lot to do with where a person's people of origin are found. It has a lot to do with geography. It has a lot to do with language. It has a lot to do with religion. And that's where I think ethnicity is a really misunderstood term. But that's really what it comes down to. So when we think about a person's ethnicity, we think about first the geography of where they're from, and then within that geography, it's generally a small area. We can talk about the language, the religion, and then the cultural norms, values, and mores of that geographical area. And that's truly what ethnicity is really all about. So, and then nationality, I guess I lied. There's another term. Nationality refers to the nation that an individual is a citizen of. And so you will see a lot of times ethnicities and nationalities are very similar, but you can have multiple ethnicities within a nation, right? The United States is a perfect example of that. We used to consider ourselves a melting pot, but really what happens in a melting pot, when you think about how alloy metals are made, you take this metal, you take this metal, and you melt it down, and it becomes a separate third element, right? Metal. But that's not what happens with people. We're more like a salad bowl or a stew, if you will, in that each ethnicity, each group has its own set of characteristics. And when we bring that all together, that's what I love about a salad metaphor, is like when we bring all those different flavors together. If I take a bite and my bite has lettuce and tomatoes on it and maybe some dressing, and then I take a second bite and has lettuce and carrots and no dressing, it's similar, but it's a different taste, which is really cool because I can throw all of these different ingredients into a salad and it's still fantastic. And every different flavor enhances the overall flavor of that salad, and it makes it better, and it works together, which is truly ideally what America would be. America would be this fantastic salad where all the different ingredients are looked at for its worth and how it contributes to the overall salad. And so that would really truly be, like I said, an ideal America. So as we consider these terms, as you read through the information in the textbook and you look at these terms, think about how that impacts your values and your behaviors of those values. And are your behaviors consistent with your values? And if they're not, where is that difference? What's going on? What's taking place? What has happened that your behaviors are inconsistent with your values? And maybe they're not. But when we think about it in these terms, how does that fit together for you? How does it fit together for you? All right, thanks. We'll see you in the next video.